Welcome to another episode of Niji Talk with EMC. Aravinu Urjam Pagara. Today, we are pleased to welcome architect Pravar Gupta. He is a postgraduate architect with over 7 years of experience spanning sustainability consulting, public policy, and finance. Throughout his career, he has advised on green buildings, large-scale infrastructure projects, while helping organizations strengthen operations, strategy, and sustainable growth. Beyond his professional work, he is a passionate trainer and mentor, having designed and delivered over more than 15 learning programs that have helped over 1,000 professionals and students with practical skills in the sustainability and built environment. Let's hear his insights on the topic sustainability that pays.
Hello everyone, I am Pravar Gupta. I'm a postgraduate architect by qualification. For past 7 years, I've been operating as a consultant in various sectors and industries. Firstly, I'm truly grateful to the EMC team for inviting me to this platform and entrusting me with the responsibility of sharing my thoughts and learnings. A quick disclaimer before I start: all the views expressed in this video today are entirely my own and do not represent any of the organizations I'm affiliated with. Let me begin with a quick question. When you hear the word sustainability, what is the first image that comes to your mind? For many of us, it may be solar panels, electric vehicles, recycle bins, green buildings, or perhaps a glossy annual report with photographs of trees and smiling communities. All of these can be part of sustainability, but none of them by themselves is sustainability. My core perspective for today is simple. Sustainability is a way of making better decisions by understanding the full impact of what an organization does on the economy, on the environment, and on people, and then acting on the impacts that matter the most. I have seen this from very three different vantage points: as a green building consultant working on large scale construction projects, as a public policy professional working with the citizens in the government system, and managing strategy and finance for a fast growing education technology company. The sectors are different, the stakeholders are different, the language is very different, but the underlying questions were remarkably similar. What are we changing through our decisions? Who benefits? Who bears the cost? Which effects are immediate? Which will emerge in next 5 or 10 years? Why should we prioritize? Who owns the response? And can we prove that our claims are correct? This is the lens I want to share today. I have titled this little talk as Sustainability That Pays. Not because every responsible decision produces an immediate financial return, and certainly not because profit is the only test of value. I use the phrase because well designed sustainability creates multiple forms of value: lower operating costs, reduced risks, stronger trust, better products, more resilient systems, and ultimately a stronger license to operate. The difference between sustainability as decoration and sustainability as strategy is whether it changes a real decision. A useful place to begin with is the word impact. An impact is not merely an activity, it is the effect an activity has or could have on the economic systems, natural systems, and people. That distinction sounds technical, but it completely changes the conversation. Installing a solar panel is an activity. Reducing dependence on fossil fuel, electricity is an impact. Conducting a training program is an activity. Improving the ability of architects or engineers to design low energy buildings is an impact. Launching a grievance portal is an activity. Resolving citizens' problems faster and fairly is an impact. Good intentions describes what we planned, impact tells us what changed. And impacts have several dimensions. They can be actual or potential, positive or negative, short term or long term, and sometimes reversible or irreversible. Consider a company that shifts all employee transport to electric vehicles. The intended positive impact may be the lower tailpipe emissions, but there may also be upstream impacts related to mineral extraction, battery production, electricity sources, or end of life disposal. A responsible assessment does not use the positive impact to cancel the negative one. It examines both and manages both. The same is true for buildings. A highly glazed facade may create a premium visual identity and increase daylight in some areas, but it may also increase heat gain, cooling demand, glare, capital costs, and dependence on mechanical systems. One design choice can create environmental, financial, and human impact at the same time. This is why sustainability cannot be reduced to a checklist of fashionable initiatives. It requires us to understand connections. In practice, I use three questions. First, what does the decision change in the real world? Second, who or what experiences the change? And third, over what time horizon will the effect appear? These questions are useful whether we are approving a building design, selecting a supplier, launching a product, drafting a government policy, or setting an organizational target. They move us from what sustainability initiative should we announce to what impact are we responsible for managing. The one lesson is that sustainability cannot be copied and pasted from one organization to another. Before choosing priorities, we must understand context. What is the organization's purpose? What products and services does it provide? Where does it operate? What resources does it depend on? Who works for it? Who supplies it? Who uses its product? Who may be affected even without having a direct contractual relationship with it? A sustainability strategy without this context is like prescribing the same diet to every person without knowing their age, health, lifestyle, or goals. Take two organizations, a software company and a cement manufacturer. Both should care about climate change, people, ethics, and governance, but the nature, location, scale, and severity of their impact are very different. For the cement industry, process emissions, fuel use, quarrying, water, worker safety, and communities impacts may be central. For the software company, data privacy, energy use in data centers, product accessibility, employee practices, or e-waste may be more significant. Even two companies in the same sector may have different priorities because their geographies, technologies, workforce, customers, and supply chains may differ. This brings us to stakeholders. A stakeholder is not simply someone who receives an annual report or attends a consultation meeting. It is any individual or group whose interests are affected or could be affected by the organization's activities. That includes employees, contract workers, suppliers, customers, investors, regulators, local communities, civil society groups, and future generations. It also includes people who may not know that they are stakeholders. For example, workers several tiers down the supply chain or communities living away from an operation but affected by air or water flows. The practical mistake organizations make often is to engage only with the most powerful or most visible stakeholders. But power and impact are not the same thing. The group with the least negotiating power may be the group experiencing the most severe effect. Meaningful engagement is therefore not a one way presentation of a finished plan, it is a two-way, ongoing, accessible, and early enough to influence the decision. A consultation held after all the major choices have been made is communication, it is not participation. Once an organization understands its context and identifies its impacts, it will usually have a long list. No organization can give equal attention to every topic at the same time. It has to prioritize. But how? A sound approach is to assess the significance for negative impacts. Usually, the questions that are important are how grave is the harm? What's the scale of it? How widespread it is? What is the scope of it? How difficult is it to repair? What is the degree of irreversibility? And where the impact has not yet occurred, how likely it is. For positive impacts, you can ask how beneficial the effect is, how widely it is experienced, and how likely it is to occur. This helps us distinguish a genuinely important topic from a convenient one. The organization sometimes prioritizes what is easy to count, the number of trees planted, training hours delivered, volunteers mobilized, or kilograms recycled. These numbers may be useful, but they can become the vanity metrics if they are disconnected from the organization's most significant impact. A training program should not be judged by the number of participants. We should ask whether participate changed decisions, whether performance improved, whether the improvement endured. Similarly, a green building strategy should not be judged by the only number of certifications involved. We should ask whether the building actually reduced energy and water demand, improved comfort, lowered life cycle costs, and performance as intended during the operation. There is another important principle. Difficulty cannot be the reason to exclude an important topic. If an impact is significant but the data is incomplete, the honest response is to not quietly remove the topic. The responsible response is to choose the limitation, explain why the information is missing, describe what is being done to improve it, and set credible timelines. In other words, prioritization must be based on significance, not convenience. One of the best governance questions a board or a leadership team can ask is, what are we not discussing because it is difficult, uncomfortable, or poorly measured? That question often reveals more than a 100-page dashboard. Let me share some practical insights from my experience in the green building consulting. Across more than 30 projects covering 100 million square meters, I worked with architects, engineers, government bodies, contractors, and clients to reduce the environmental impact of buildings. On several projects, passive design and system optimization reduced operational energy demand by approximately 20%. In some cases, careful simulation and design changes created HVAC cost savings of up to 50%. The most important lesson was not that we needed more technology, it was the sequence of decisions mattered. A common approach to design a resource intensive building is to add efficient equipment or renewable energy to make it work. But the stronger approach is to begin by reducing the demand. Can the building orientation reduce the heat gain? Can shading control reduce direct solar radiation? Can the envelope perform better? Can daylight be improved without creating glare? Can spaces be planned to reduce conditioned areas? Can equipment loads be lowered? Only after reducing demand should we optimize the system, and only then should we size the renewable energy system. This is the sustainability as design intelligence. It also demonstrates why environmental and financial value often reinforce one another. A smaller cooling load can mean smaller equipment, smaller capital expenditures, lower electricity bills, and lower emissions. The intervention does not have to be expensive. In fact, some of the most powerful changes are cost neutral when made early enough. I once analyzed a large construction BOQ and tender documents, a project worth 3,000 crore, to identify low carbon interventions that could be incorporated without undermining the commercial viability. This exercise taught me that sustainability is frequently lost not because the solution is unknown, but because the decisions are taken too late. Once the facade is frozen, the structure and services are sized, and the procurement is underway, every change becomes expensive and adversarial. Early integration is therefore a sustainability strategy and a cost strategy. There is also a reporting lesson here. I claim such as 20% energy reduction is meaningful only when the baseline, assumptions, simulation method, operating schedules, weather files, system boundaries, and measurement approach are clear. Otherwise, the number may be technically true but practically misleading. A model is not the building. A design target is not operational performance. And certification is not the same as outcome. Credibility comes from showing the method, acknowledging uncertainty, and tracking the effect after occupation. So the professional insight I would offer is to not begin with the green product. Begin with the impact you want to reduce. Ask whether demand can be avoided before it is supplied more efficiently. So how can organization turn these ideas into practice? I suggest a simple sequence. First, understand the context. Map the organization's purpose, activities, locations, workforce, value chain, and stakeholders. Second, identify its impacts. Look for actual and potential effects, positive and negative effects, and as direct as well as value chain effects. Third, assess the significance. Consider scale, scope, irreversibility, likelihood. Listen especially to those who are more affected, not only to those who are easiest to reach. Set priorities, focus attention and reporting on the most significant impacts while remembering that a topic does not disappear because it falls below a reporting threshold. Legal and ethical responsibility still applies. Fifth is to assign the ownership and action. For each priority, define the policy, accountable leader, operational owner, resources, timelines, targets, escalation routes. Six is to collect the evidence, record baselines, methods, assumptions, boundaries, outcomes, limitations. Consider the risks. Last is to learn and respond. Review the performance. Engage stakeholders, correct unintended effects, and provide remedy where the organization has caused or contributed to them. Sustainability is not about preventing future harm. It is to also about what an organization does when the harm has already been occurred. A grievance mechanism that receives complaints but does not resolve them is not accountability. A supplier audit that repeatedly identifies unsafe conditions without changing sourcing decisions is not due diligence. A building performance review that finds a major energy gap but assigns no corrective action is not learning. The quality of a system is revealed by what happens after the bad news arrives. Organization often celebrates the ability to collect positive data. Mature organizations build ability to surface negative data early, discuss it without fear, and act on it. Now that I close, I want to make a commercial case by why all this matters. Because I know some of you may still be thinking this sounds like a compliance department problem or a ESG department problem, not a growth strategy, not a business strategy. Here is what changed my mind permanently. When you cannot measure your own impact credibly, you cannot see your own financial risk early. These are not two separate exercises, these are the same exercises viewed from two different directions. In buildings, every significant issue identified energy performance index, energy intensity, water risk, indoor air quality, or poor envelope performance eventually appeared as a financial line item somewhere, an operating cost, an insurance exposure, an asset valuation, a regulatory risk, or a productivity concern. The sustainability data was often the early warning system for financial data. By the time a cost appears on a profit and a loss statement, the underlying problem has usually existed for years. A building envelope inefficiency that costs someone lakhs every year in cooling does not suddenly emerge in the annual report. It was always there, waiting for someone to measure it earlier. That is exactly the instinct I carried into building reporting and decision systems around 100 CR operations. Create visibility that reveals the small operational risk before it becomes the balance sheet risk. Good impact reporting and good financial discipline are the same discipline applied to different denominators. Both ask, what is changing? Where is the risk accumulating? Who owns it? What evidence do we have? What will we do next? There is a second most strategic reason this matters now. The people allocating capitals, investors, lenders, procurement teams, and even government tenders are getting better at distinguishing organizations that can produce real evidence from organizations that produce polished paragraphs. Over the last year, while formally studying how enterprise grade sustainability reporting works, the biggest shift I observed was not the organization had suddenly become more virtuous. It was that the audience asking for proof had become more sophisticated. Organizations that cannot produce a defensible number increasingly become priced out of capital, tenders, partnerships, and trust. So my honest pitch is here. Do not treat impact measurement as a cost center that you tolerate because the rating scheme demands it. Treat it the way I learned to treat building energy model, as one of the earliest and the cheapest guide you will ever get about your risk and your opportunity is actually live. At the same time, commercial value cannot be the only test. Some responsibilities remain even when the financial return is not immediate or easy to measure. The absence of the short-term business case does not erase a significant impact on the people or the environment. So the final question is not what can we call sustainable. It is what better decisions will we make because we understand our impact. Thank you for your time.
Energy Talk with EMC. അറിവിന് ഊർജ്ജം പകരാം. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.